city. And the fourth is economic development. Now, usually when I'm given a time frame, I usually go over when I get to talking about stuff. So just do the time, and I'll look for the sign. Okay, I'm going to start with economic development because I know that's been a hot button topic for citizens in Jackson. Because we've had so many businesses leave, and we have so much unemployment, and we have a lot of space available for folk to come in and do business. There have been a lot of complaints about how the city does business, and under Mayor Lumumba, he said, we're open for business. We're open for business. But as any new person who comes into a bureaucracy as large as the city of Jackson, when you step in, you find out a lot of stuff that you didn't know when you were on the outside. And so we found out that the city's policies and procedures with regards to how they do business have not been updated for over 20 years. We also found out that we have people who've been with the city for over 20 years who really were quite resistant to change. So it wasn't as easy as coming in and saying we're open for business. There were a lot of things that had to change to make Jackson business friendly. And of course, a lot of those changes hadn't had time to take place. One of the things we have done, however, is we did improve our community improvement process. And you see a lot more vacant lots and abandoned houses on the agenda that have been adjudicated, which gives the city the right to go in and clean them up and tear them down. You will also notice that there were a lot of projects that were moving forward before Mayor Lumumba take office that have continued to move forward and are now in the process of actually being brought to fruition, such as the Weston Hotel, which is one big thing, the Siemens deal, which, I know there are a lot of problems with it, Tony, but it's something we inherited, and it's moving forward. The 1% sales tax, which gives us revenue to make a lot of the infrastructure changes, and I didn't mention infrastructure, but a lot of the infrastructure changes that you want to see. Paved roads, clean water. The water, when it leaves the plant, is clean, but when it gets into our pipes, and by the time it gets to you, it picks up a lot of gunk. So the 1% to deal with that. The drainage issues. We just had this huge scare about the reservoir being over 35 feet or something like that. They're going to have to open the gates and send the water down the Pearl, which would send it into certain tributaries that would come into the city of Jackson. And so there were a few streets underwater, but not half as bad as we expected, and we dodged the bullet. We acknowledge that. We dodged the bullet. But it takes time. You have to have a plan. And so we are in the process of developing that plan. Drainage, clean water, streets, all of that. Very important, very high on the priority list for helping Jackson move forward. We're developing the master plan that has to be approved by the 1% sales tax commission. So the city workers are putting those pieces in place. They will be reviewed by an engineer for feasibility and to make recommendations. And then those plans will roll out to the citizens for their input. And when I say input, for example, if we have a street that's way down on the list, and for some reason in your community you think it should be a higher priority for your area, we want to hear that. Then we want to go back and forth, the pros and cons as to whether or not that will work. Infrastructure. Economic development, we want to give the support for small businesses, and we do have a capacity problem. We're about to take in close to $1 billion in money, and that money can be leveraged for even more. I would estimate up to $2 billion worth of work coming into this city to build, fix the infrastructure and do other things. When you have that kind of money, it takes a lot of planning to make sure that you use it right. And you have to have the right people in place to make it happen. The city has to be good stewards of that money. And that's what we're trying to do right now by all of this planning before we roll it out. And of course, the sales commission will give the final say-so on this master plan that's developed by the city. Okay, so in economic development, crime, all of those things are tied together, right? We know that when you have high poverty, you have high crime, because people will do what they have to do to satisfy their needs. So, economic development is extremely important so that we can provide jobs. We see the infrastructure as the jump starting point for providing those jobs. We can train people, but we have to have businesses that have the capacity to do the work. We don't want first time, oh, I'm gonna hang my shingle up so I can get some of this 1% money. We want people with a proven track record. But what we expect of those people with proven track records is to take on some of our local contractors and teach them what they need to know to build their capacity so they can stop being subs and become primes. That's what we want to see happen here in the city of Jackson. In the process of becoming primes, then they develop our workforce. So there'll be workforce development training programs, and through those programs, we can build an employed tax base where crime is no longer the best option for most people. Training. Education is also a part of that. You have to educate people so that they have the skill sets that they need to go out and get jobs. We also have to provide other services for the community so that people are more involved in what's happening in their community. So we have to do what we call community policing. Community policing, where people get involved in building the safety of their own neighborhoods and communities, participating with law enforcement in helping build safe communities for family and children. What else did I say? Crime. Okay, education. Jackson Public Schools has to improve. It's as simple as that. With the graduation rate of something like 60%, that means that 40% that kids that start in 9th grade don't finish. That's just totally unacceptable. That has to change. That affects economic development as well. Companies don't want to locate places where they don't have an educated workforce that they can employ. They don't want to have to pay relocation expenses to move people in to do what has to be done. So the city has a limited role. All we do is appoint school board members. However, one of the things that we would like to see happen is we'd like to have an elected school board. What happens with an elected school board? They can be accountable. So they have to listen to the people that they represent. So that's one of the things. The other thing is being more supportive of JPS, of the school district, and helping it reach its goals and objectives. Now there's a new plan that's being rolled out called the Lyman Jackson, modeled after Lyman Nashville, and Tony will probably touch on that as well, because he and Mayor Lumba both were on the governing board. So we understand that the city has to be as supportive as possible in helping the school district reinvent itself and become the kind of school district that's going to produce workers for the 21st century. Not just people to go on to college. Of course, we want everybody to go into college, but we also need workers. We need people to do things like keep our infrastructure up and running. So that's the point with education. And then I'll end with the health initiative, because this is something that's very important to me. I'm a psychologist, so I'm in the mental health field. But I understand that people's well-being is completely tied to their physical and mental health. And so when I was a professor, I'd always get these studies. Jackson is #1 in obesity, health disparities with regards to diabetes and cardiovascular disease and stroke. All of these things we are disproportionately affected by in the South, but it's even higher right here in Jackson, Mississippi. So you can't have if you don't have a healthy, educated workforce, you're still in trouble, because sick time costs a lot to employers. Emotional well-being. I try to stay away from mental health because there's such a stigma about it. But emotional well-being can be a real problem and a real drain on an economy when you don't have people who think clearly enough to go to work every day and do the jobs that they have to do. So a healthy populace is a happy populace, and I think we kind of ignored the human element with all of the infrastructure and all of that kind of stuff. So we really need to focus on making Jackson a healthy city. We want to be number one in health and longevity. So we want to participate in putting sidewalks in communities, putting walking trails in communities, and promoting programs in churches, in community centers that teach people how to prepare food that tastes good, because Jackson has some of the best food that I've ever had. And I have 20 pounds on me to show it. But how to prepare those foods in a way that promotes health and longevity. So that's another issue with this campaign. And I'd like to thank all of you for listening to me. And tomorrow I'd like to ask you